Bandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parejana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Scha Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanajana Shalakaya Chakshurum militam yena tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Guruganarasisha Sambhushitam Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Vidam Udshalam Bharatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwaguruncha Divyat Bhagavat Premnavi Bijapradam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Baranam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sareka Baranam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubhadam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishvara Shidaram Sri Siddhanta Saraswati Vidito Gaudiya Gauravanvai Bhato Banoriba Prabhata Gagane Yogara Sankirtanai Mayavadi Tamingilo Daragatanu Dritya Jivaniman Krishna Prema Sudabdi Gahana Sukam Pradat Prabhum Tambaje Mancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahaparanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Adi-lila, chapter 7, Pancha-tattva, Lord Chaitanya and 5 features. Verse number 52. Ihashuni rohe Prabhu, Ishad hasya, Sekale ek bipra milila asya. While Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar were thus talking with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he only smiled slightly and remained silent. At that time a Brahmin came there to meet the Lord. Because the blasphemy was cast against Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he did not feel sorry, and therefore he was smiling. This is ideal Vaishnava behavior. One should not become angry upon hearing criticism of himself. But if other Vaishnavas are criticized, one must be prepared to act as previously suggested. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very compassionate for his pure devotees, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar. Therefore, by his grace, the Brahmin immediately came to him. By his omnipotence, the Lord created the situation for the happiness of his devotees. Ashinivedana kore charane doria, ekbastu magon deho prasana hoya. The Brahmin immediately fell at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and requested him to accept his proposal in a joyful mood. The Vedic injunctions state, Tadvidi pranipatina pariprashnena sevaya. One must approach a superior authority in humbleness. One cannot challenge a superior authority, but with great submission, one can submit his proposal for acceptance by the spiritual master or spiritual authorities. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an ideal teacher by his personal behavior, and so also are all his disciples. Thus the Brahmin, being purified in association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, followed these principles in submitting his request to the higher authority. He fell down at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then spoke as follows. Sakala sannyasi mui koinu nimantran tumijari aisha purna hoy moraman. My dear Lord, I have invited all the sannyasis of Varanasi, of Benares, to my home. My desires will be fulfilled if you also accept my invitation. This Brahmin knew that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the only Vaishnava sannyasi in Benares at that time, and all the others were mayavadis. It is the duty of a grihastha to sometimes invite sannyasis to take food at his house, But he also knew that it would be very difficult to induce Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept such an invitation because the mayavadi sannyasis would be present. Therefore, he fell down at his feet and fervently appealed to the Lord to be compassionate and grant his request. Thus he humbly submitted his desire. Najaha sannyasi goshti iha ami jani more anugraha koro nimantrana mani. My dear Lord, I know that you never mix with other sannyasis, but please be merciful upon me and accept my invitation. An acharya, or great personality of the Vaishnava school, is very strict in his principles, but although he is as hard as a thunderbolt, sometimes he is as soft as a rose. Thus, actually, he is independent. He follows all the rules and regulations strictly, but sometimes he slackens his policy. It was known that Lord Chaitanya never mixed with the mayavadi sannyasis. Yet he conceded to the request of the Brahmin as stated in the next verse. Prabhu Hashi Nimantrana Koila Angikar Sannyasire Kripa Lagi E Bangi Tahar. Lord Chaitanya smiled and accepted the invitation of the Brahmin. He made this gesture to show his mercy to the mayavadi sannyasis. Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar appealed to the lotus feet of the Lord regarding their grief at the criticism of him by the sannyasis in Benares. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu merely smiled, yet he wanted to fulfill the desires of his devotees, and the opportunity came when the Brahmin came to request him to accept his invitation to be present in the midst of the other sannyasis. This coincidence was made possible by the omnipotence of the Lord. Sevi prajanan prabhu na jana karagare tahara preranaya tare atyagraha kore. The Brahmin knew that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never went to anyone else's house, yet due to inspiration from the Lord, he earnestly requested him to accept the invitation. Aradine Gela Prabhu se viprabhavane dekilena basi jachan sannyasira gane. The next day, when Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the house of that Brahmin, he saw all the sannyasis of Benares sitting there. Sab namaskari gela para prakalane para prakalana kori basila sestane. As soon as Mahaprabhu saw the sannyasis, he immediately offered obeisances, and then he went to wash his feet. After washing his feet, he sat down by the place where he had done so. By offering his obeisances to the mayavadi sannyasis, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly exhibited his humbleness to everyone. Vaishnavas must not be disrespectful to anyone, to say nothing of a sannyasi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, Amanina manadena, one should always be respectful to others, but should not demand respect for himself. A sannyasi should always walk barefoot, and therefore, when he enters a temple or a society of devotees, he should first wash his feet and then sit down in a proper place. In India, it is still the prevalent custom that one puts his shoes in a specified place and then enter the temple barefoot after washing his feet. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an ideal acharya, and those who follow in his footsteps should practice the methods of devotional life that he teaches us. Basya Korila Kichu Aishvarya Prakash Mahatejo Moy Bapu Koti Suryabas. After sitting on the ground, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his mystic power by manifesting an effulgence as brilliant as the illumination of millions of suns. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, is full of all potencies. Therefore, it is not remarkable for him to manifest the illumination of millions of suns. Lord Sri Krishna is known as Yogeshwara, the master of all mystic powers. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself. Therefore, he can exhibit any mystic power. Prabhave Karshila Sab Sannyasi Raman Utila Sannyasi Sab Chariya Asan. When the sannyasis saw the brilliant illumination of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their minds were attracted, and they all immediately gave up their sitting places and stood in respect. To draw the attention of common men, sometimes saintly persons, acharyas, and teachers exhibited extraordinary opulences. This is necessary to attract attention of fools, but a saintly person should not misuse such power for personal sense gratification like false saints who declare themselves to be God. Even a magician can exhibit extraordinary feats that are not understandable to common men, but this does not mean that the magician is God. It is a most sinful activity to attract attention by exhibiting mystic powers and then to utilize this opportunity to declare oneself to be God. A real saintly person never declares himself to be God, but always places himself at the position of a servant of God. Places himself in the position of a servant of God. For a servant of God, there is no need to exhibit mystic powers, and he does not like to do so, but on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a humble servant of God performs his activities in such a wonderful way that no common man can dare try to act like him. Yet a saintly person never takes credit for such actions, because he knows very well that when wonderful things are done on his behalf by the grace of the Supreme Lord, all credit goes to the master and not to the servant. Prakashananda Name Sarva Sannyasi Pradhan Prabhuke Kohila Kichu Koriya Saman. The leader of all the mayavadi sannyasis present was named Prakashananda Saraswati, and after standing up, he addressed Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as follows with great respect. As Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed respect to all the mayavadi sannyasis, similarly the leader of the mayavadi sannyasis, Prakashananda, also showed his respects to the Lord. Ihan Aisha, Shunaha Sripad, Apavitra Stane Maisha, Kiba Abasad. Please come here, Your Holiness. Why do you sit in that unclean place? What has caused your lamentation? Here is the distinction between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati. In the material world, everyone wants to introduce himself as very important and great. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced himself very humbly and meekly. The Mayavadis were sitting in an exalted place, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat in a place that was not even clean. Therefore, the Mayavadi sannyasis thought that he must have been aggrieved for some reason, and Prakashananda Saraswati inquired about the cause for his lamentation. Prabhu kohe amihoy hina sampradiya. No. Prabhu kohe amihoy hina sampradaya. Toma sabar savai basite na jujai. The Lord replied, I belong to a lower order of sannyasis, therefore I do not deserve to sit with you. Mayavadi sannyasis are always very puffed up because of their knowledge of Sanskrit and because they belong to the Shankar Sampradaya. They're always under the impression that unless one is a Brahmin and a very good Sanskrit scholar, especially in grammar, one cannot accept the renounced order of life or become a preacher. Mayavadi sannyasis always misinterpret all the Shastras with their word jugglery and grammatical compositions, yet Sripad Shankaracharya himself condemns such jugglery of words in the verse Prapte Sanihite Kale Nahi Rakati Dukrin Karane. Dukrin refers to suffixes and prefixes in Sanskrit grammar. Shankaracharya warned his disciples that if they concerned themselves only with the principles of grammar, not worshipping Govinda, they were fools, and they were fools who would never be saved. Yet in spite of Sripad Shankaracharya's instructions, Foolish mayavadi sannyasis are always busy juggling words on the basis of strict Sanskrit grammar. Mayavadi sannyasis are very puffed up if they hold the elevated. Mayavadi sannyasis are very puffed up if they hold the elevated sannyas title Tirtha, Ashram, or Saraswati. Even among Mayavadis, those who belong to other sampradayas and hold other titles such as Ban, Aranya, or Bharati are considered to be lower grade sannyasis. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas from the Bharati Sampradaya, and thus he considered himself a lower sannyasi than Prakashananda Saraswati. To remain distinct from Vaishnava sannyasis, the sannyasi of the Mayavadi Sampradaya, to remain distinct from Vaishnava sannyasis, the sannyasis of the Mayavadi Sampradaya always think themselves to be situated in a very much elevated spiritual order. But Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in order to teach them how to become humble and meek, accepted himself as belonging to a lower sampradaya of sannyasis. Thus, he wanted to point out clearly that a sannyasi is one who is advanced in spiritual knowledge. One who is advanced in spiritual knowledge should be accepted as occupying a better position than those who lack such knowledge. The Mayavadi Sampradaya sannyasis are generally known as Vedantis, as if Vedanta were their monopoly. Actually, however, Vedanti refers to a person who perfectly knows Krishna. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedya. By all the Vedas, it is Krishna who is to be known. The so-called Mayavadi Vedantis do not know that Krishna is, therefore their title is... The Mayavadi sannyasi Vedantis do not know who Krishna is. Therefore, their title of Vedanti, or knower of Vedanta philosophy, is simply a pretension. Mayavadi sannyasis always think of themselves as real sannyasis and consider sannyasis of the Vaishnava order to be brahmacharis. A brahmachari is supposed to engage in the service of a sannyasi and accept him as his guru. Mayavadi sannyasis therefore declare themselves to be not only gurus, but jagat gurus, or the spiritual masters of the entire world, although of course they cannot see the entire world. Sometimes they dress gorgeously and travel on the banks of Sometimes they dress gorgeously and travel on the backs of elephants in processions, and thus they are always puffed up, accepting themselves as Jagat Gurus. Srila Rupa Goswami, however, has explained that Jagat Guru properly refers to one who is the controller of his tongue, mind, words, belly, genitals, and anger. Prativin sasishat. Prativin sasishat. Prativim sasishat. Such a Jagat Guru is completely fit to make disciples all over the world. Due to false prestige, Mayavadi sannyasis who do not have these qualifications sometimes harass and blaspheme a Vaishnava sannyasi who humbly engages in the service of the Lord. Akpane Prakashananda Hatete Doriya Basaila Sabamadye Samana Korea. Prakashananda Saraswati, however, caught Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally by the hand and seated him with great respect in the midst of the assembly. The respectful behavior of Prakashananda Saraswati towards Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much to be appreciated. Such behavior is calculated to be agyata sukriti, or pious activities that one executes unknowingly. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very tactfully gave Prakashananda Saraswati an opportunity to advance in agyata sukriti, so that in the future he might actually become a Vaishnava sannyasi. So Mahaprabhu's sitting in the unclean place where he had washed his feet also created a situation by which Prakashananda Saraswati would personally go there and extend his hand and then bring Mahaprabhu properly into the assembly. And that gave him some sukriti so that he could actually hear from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Puchila Tomaranama Sri Krishna Chaitanya Keshava Bharatira Sishya Tate Tumi Danya. Prakashananda Saraswati then said, I understand that your name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya. You are a disciple of Sri Keshav Bharati, and therefore you are glorious. Sampradayika sannyasi tumi raha egrame ki karane amas sabar nakora darshane. You belong to our Shankar Sampradaya and live in our village, Varanasi. Why then do you not associate with us? Why is it that you avoid even seeing us? A Vaishnav sannyasi or a Vaishnava in the second stage of advancement in spiritual knowledge can understand four principles, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees, the innocent, and the jealous. And he behaves differently with each. So these are the characteristics of a Madhyamadikari. There's Kanishtadikari, Madhyamadikari, and Uttamadikari. So in the stage of the middle class, which is the Madhyamadikari, he engages in these principles, and they are actually, we can say, the basis of his preaching, that he worships the Lord, he befriends the devotees, he also preaches to the innocent, and he avoids the association who are inimical or who are blasphemous of the Lord. Those are the principles of Madhyamadikari, and that's the principles of being able to preach. To Uttamadikari, who sees everyone, regardless of who they are, sees everyone engaged in the service of the Lord, well, there's not really much that person will do in terms of preaching, because he's already seeing everyone in the service of the Lord. He has the highest vision. So, but Mahaprabhu is showing these principles. Vaishnav sannyasi or a Vaishnava in the second stage of advancement in spiritual knowledge can understand four principles, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees, the innocent, and the jealous. And he behaves differently with each. He tries to increase his love for Godhead, make friendship with devotees, and preach Krishna consciousness among the innocent. But he avoids the jealous who are envious of the Krishna consciousness movement. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself exemplified such behavior, and this is why Prakashananda Saraswati inquired why he did not associate or even talk with them. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed by example that a preacher of the Krishna conscious movement generally should not waste his time talking with mayavadi sannyasis. But when there are arguments on the basis of Shastra, Vaishnava must come forward to talk and defeat them in philosophy. According to mayavadi sannyasis, only one who takes sannyas in the disciplic succession from Shankaracharya is a Vedic sannyasi. Sometimes it is challenged that the sannyasis who are preaching in the Krishna conscious movement are not genuine because they do not belong to Brahmin families. For mayavadis do not offer sannyas to one who does not belong to a Brahmin family by birth. So that's generally what sannyas means, that the person is from a Brahmin family. So there's the four orders, four varnas, and there's the four divisions of society, and then there are also the four divisions of or ashramas. So the divisions of the society are Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And in those divisions, the Brahman's in the highest position. Then in ashramas, or spiritual divisions, there's sannyas, brahmachari, vanaprastha, and grihastha. So in those divisions, the highest is the sannyasi. So the sannyasis would be the highest of the ashramas, and they are also the highest of the of the Varnas, because they would generally always be from Brahmin families. So Brahmin sannyasis would be the highest position in society. So sometimes it is challenged that sannyasis who are preaching in the Krishna conscious movement are not genuine because they do not belong to Brahmin families. But we consider Vaishnavas higher than Brahmins, and it was established by Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur that he would give Brahmin initiation to persons who are even from Western families, who are not even within the Varna Ashram system at all, because they're neither Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras, and yet they would be given Brahmin initiation, especially to engage in worship within the temples. So, mayavadis do not offer sannyas to one who does not belong to a Brahmin family by birth. Unfortunately, however, they do not know that at present everyone is born a Shudra, kalo Shudra sambhavaha. It is to be understood that there are no Brahmins in this age, because those who claim to be Brahmins simply on the basis of birthright do not have the Brahminical qualifications. So this is completely valid point. It is to be understood that there are no Brahmins in this age, because those who claim to be Brahmins simply on the basis of birthright do not have the Brahminical qualifications. However, even if one is born in a non-Brahmin family, if he has the Brahminical qualifications, he should be accepted as a Brahmin, as confirmed by Srila Narada Muni and the great saint Sridhar Swami. This is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Narada and Sridhar Swami completely agree that one cannot be a Brahmin by birthright, but must possess the qualities of a Brahmin. Thus, in our Krishna conscious movement, we can never offer the sannyas order to a person whom we do not find to be qualified in terms of the prescribed Brahminical principles. Although it is a fact that unless one is a Brahmin, he cannot become a sannyasi, it is not a valid principle that an unqualified man who is born in a Brahmin family is a Brahmin, whereas a Brahminically qualified person born in a non-Brahmin family cannot be accepted. The Krishna conscious movement strictly follows the injunctions of Srimad Bhagavatam, avoiding misleading heresy and manufactured conclusions. So, I'm not saying this is a qualification, but I remember when I was in a university, I considered that if I graduated from that university, especially in science, that then I would be employed by persons who, they just employ you based on, you have a degree and they pay money to have your services. But actually one of the qualifications of Brahmins is that they don't just work. They just don't go to work for earning money. They're not generally employed by others. I mean, that's one of the qualifications of a Brahmin. Now, I didn't have that qualification, but I did consider that I'm not for sale, that I'm not going to graduate just so I can go to the highest bidder and be employed in that way. So that was my consideration. From that point on, I tended to go away from. I graduated, but then I began actually looking for some spiritual practices in my life, and that's when I met the devotees. But here, there's talk about there are no qualified Brahmins in modern society, and that's the that's the fact. We see many persons who come from Brahmin families, but they don't engage in the activities of Brahmins. They're not the intelligentsia of society. They don't teach others by example. Sannyasi hoya kora nartanagayan babuka sabha sange loya kora sankirtan. This is Prakashananda Saraswati speaking. You are sannyasi. Why then do you indulge in chanting and dancing, engaging in your sankirtan movement in the company of fanatics? So the word babuka is translated here as fanatics, and it can be sometimes it can be translated as either fanatics or sentimentalist. Sometimes it's translated as fanatics, as in this case, and also can be translated in other cases in the same conversation. It's translated as sentimentalist. So you can say, how is that possible? Because many times words have more than one meaning, and there is also what's called as the denotation and connotation of a word. So denotation is maybe the dictionary definition, and connotation is the what the word encompasses, what the word makes you think of also. The connotation. You are a sannyasi. Why do you indulge in chanting and dancing, engaging in your sankirtan movement in the company of fanatics? This is a challenge by Prakashananda Saraswati to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the object of Vedanta philosophical research, has very kindly determined who is an appropriate candidate for study of Vedanta philosophy. The first qualification of such a candidate is expressed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sikshastika, Trinadapi Sunichena Taror Iva Sahishnuna Amanena Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. This statement indicates that one can hear or speak about Vedanta philosophy through the disciplic succession. One must be very humble and meek, more tolerant than a tree, and more humble than the grass. One should not claim respect for oneself, but should be prepared to give all respect to others. One must have these qualifications to be eligible to understand Vedic knowledge. Vedanta Patana Jnana Sanyasira Dharma Tahachade Korakene Bhavukera Karma. Meditation and the study of Vedanta are the sole duties of a sannyasi. Why do you abandon these to dance with fanatics? As explained in regard to verse 41, mayavadi sannyasis do not approve of chanting and dancing. Prakashananda Saraswati, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, misunderstood Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a misled young sannyasi, and therefore he asked him why he indulged in the association of fanatics instead of executing the duty of a sannyasi. Prabhave Dekiye Toma Sakat Narayana Hinachara Korakene Itekhi Karana. You look as brilliant as if you were Narayan himself. Will you kindly explain the reason you have adopted the behavior of lower class people? Due to renunciation, Vedanta study, meditation, and the strict regulative principles of their daily routine, mayavadi sannyasis are certainly in a position to execute pious activities. Thus Prakashananda Saraswati, on account of his piety, could understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not an ordinary person, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sakshat Narayan. He considered him to be Narayan himself. Mayavadi sannyasis address one another as Narayan because they think that they are all going to be Narayan or merge with Narayan in the next life. Prakashananda Saraswati appreciated that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already directly become Narayan and did not need to wait until his next life. One difference between the Vaishnava and Mayavadi philosophies is that Mayavadi philosophers think that after giving up their bodies, they are going to become Narayan by merging with his body, whereas Vaishnava philosophers understand that after the body dies, they are going to have a transcendental spiritual body in which to associate with Narayan. So anyway, Prakashananda said to Mahaprabhu, because Mahaprabhu had just exhibited such a brilliant effulgence like that of millions of suns. So he says, you look as brilliant as if you were Narayan himself. Then why will you kindly explain the reason you have adopted the behavior of lower class people by just chanting and dancing? Prabhu kohe shuna Sripad iharakaran gurum more murka deki korila shashan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to Prakashananda Saraswati, my dear sir, kindly hear the reason. My spiritual master considered me a fool, and therefore he chastised me. When Prakashananda Saraswati inquired from Mahaprabhu why he neither studied Vedanta nor performed meditation, Lord Chaitanya presented himself as a number one fool in order to indicate that the present age, Kali Yuga, is an age of fools and rascals in which it is not possible to obtain perfection simply by reading Vedanta philosophy and meditating. The Shastras strongly recommend Harinama, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nashtieva, Nashtieva, Nashtieva Gatiranyata. In the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. People in general in Kali Yuga are so fallen that it is not possible for them to obtain perfection simply by studying the Vedanta Sutra. One should therefore seriously take to the constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Murka Tumi Tomar Nahika Vedantadikar Krishna Mantra Japa Sada E Mantrasar. So Mahaprabhu is referring to what his spiritual master told him. His spiritual master said, you are a fool, he said. You are not qualified to study Vedanta philosophy, and therefore you must always chant the holy name of Krishna. This is the essence of all mantras or Vedic hymns. Sri Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj comments in this connection, one can become perfectly successful in the mission of his life if he acts exactly according to the words he hears from the mouth of his spiritual master. This acceptance of the words of the spiritual master is called Shrotavakya, which indicates that the disciple must carry out the spiritual master's instructions without deviation. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks in this connection that a disciple must accept the words of his spiritual master as his life and soul. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here confirms this by saying that since his spiritual master ordered him only to chant the holy name of Krishna, he always chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra according to this direction. Krishna Mantra Japa Sada E Mantrasar. Krishna is the origin of everything. Therefore, when a person is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that his relationship with Krishna has been fully confirmed. Lacking Krishna consciousness, one is only partially related with Krishna and therefore not in his constitutional position. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the spiritual master of the entire universe, he nevertheless took the position of a disciple in order to teach by example how a devotee should strictly follow the orders of a spiritual master in executing the duty of always chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. One who is very much attracted to the study of Vedanta philosophy must take lessons from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this age, no one is actually competent to study Vedanta, and therefore it is better that one chant the holy name of the Lord, which is the essence of all Vedic knowledge, as Krishna himself confirms in the Bhagavad Gita. Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo vedanta krid veda vedeva chaham. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Only fools give up the service of the spiritual master and think themselves advanced in spiritual knowledge. In order to check such fools, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself presented the perfect example of how to be a disciple. A spiritual master knows very well how to engage each disciple in a particular duty. But if a disciple, thinking himself more advanced than his spiritual master, gives up his orders and acts independently, he checks his own spiritual progress. Every disciple must consider himself completely unaware of the science of Krishna and must always be ready to carry out the orders of the spiritual master to become competent in Krishna consciousness. A disciple should always remain a fool before his spiritual master. Therefore, sometimes pseudo-spiritualists accept a spiritual master who is not even fit to become a disciple because they want to keep him under their control. This is useless for spiritual realization. One who imperfectly knows Krishna consciousness cannot know Vedanta philosophy. A showy display of Vedanta study without Krishna consciousness is a feature of the external energy Maya. And as long as one is attracted by the inebrities of this ever-changing material energy, he deviates from devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An actual follower of the Vedanta philosophy is a devotee of Lord Vishnu, who is the greatest of the great and the maintainer of the entire universe. Unless one surpasses the field of activities in service to the limited, one cannot reach the unlimited. Knowledge of the unlimited is actual Brahma Gyan, or knowledge of the Supreme. Those who are addicted to fruitive activities and speculative knowledge cannot understand the value of the holy name of Lord Krishna, which is always completely pure, eternally liberated, and full of spiritual bliss. And translation, Satchidananda. One who has taken shelter of the holy name of the Lord, which is identical with the Lord, does not have to study Vedanta philosophy, for he has already completed all such study. One who is unfit to chant the holy name of Krishna, but thinks that the holy name is different from Krishna and thus takes shelter of Vedanta study in order to understand him, must be considered the number one fool, as confirmed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by his personal behavior, and philosophical speculators by his personal behavior. And philosophical speculators who want to make Vedanta philosophy an academic career are also considered to be within the material energy. A person who always chants the holy name of the Lord, however, is already beyond the ocean of nescience, and thus even a person born in a low family who engages in chanting the holy name of the Lord is considered to be beyond the study of Vedanta philosophy. In this connection, Srimad Bhagavatam states, Aho bata swapacho to gariyan yajivagre vartate namatubhyam te pustapaste jehuvu shashnurarya brahmanuchur nama grinantiyete. If a person born in a family of dog-eaters takes to the chanting of the holy name of Krishna, it is to be understood that in his previous life he must have executed all kinds of austerities and penances and performed all the Vedic yagyas. Another quotation states, Rigveda tad yagyor veda samavedo pi atarvanaha aditastena yenoktam harer iti aksharadvayam. A person who chants the two syllables Hari has already studied the four Vedas, Sama, Rig, Yajur, and Atharva. Taking advantage of these verses, there are some Sahajiyas who, taking everything very cheaply, consider themselves elevated Vaishnavas, but do not care even to touch the Vedanta Sutra or Vedanta philosophy. A real Vaishnava should, however, study Vedanta philosophy, but after studying Vedanta, one does not adopt the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. He is no better than a mayavadi. Therefore, one should not be a mayavadi, yet one should not be unaware of the subject matter of Vedanta philosophy. Indeed, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his knowledge of Vedanta in his discourses with Prakashananda Saraswati. Thus, it is to be understood that a Vaishnava should be completely conversant with Vedanta philosophy, yet he should not think that studying Vedanta is all in all, and therefore be unattached to the chanting of the holy name. A devotee must know the importance of simultaneously understanding Vedanta philosophy and chanting the holy names. If by studying Vedanta one becomes an impersonalist, he has not been able to understand Vedanta. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Vedanta means the end of knowledge. The ultimate end of knowledge is knowledge of Krishna, who is identical with his holy name. Cheap Vaishnava Sahajiyas do not care to study the Vedanta philosophy is commented upon by the four acharyas. In the Gaudiya Sampradaya, there is a Vedanta commentary called the Govinda Bhashya, but the Sahajiyas considered such commentaries to be untouchable philosophical speculation, and they consider the acharyas to be mixed devotees. Thus, they clear their way to hell. So, we understand the commentary on the Vedanta philosophy, or on the Vedanta Sutra, I should say, is the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's and actually the knowledge, as I believe stated by our acharyas, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is the understanding of the Srimad Bhagavatam. As I mentioned, I believe in the commentary by Srila Prabhupada that the Srimad Bhagavatam, its meaning and is also the word percolated is used. So sometimes people know that percolation means that something becomes more condensed by being passing and being continually made stronger. So, like coffee, for instance, is percolated. So the knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can say, is presented in that way in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, so I'm going to stop at this point. And tomorrow is Friday. Hopefully tomorrow we'll continue with this reading. This chapter is it's a very nice chapter on the Pancha-tattva. I really like it. Yes. Yeah. So let's now sing Hari Haraya. Turn this microphone down a little bit, because we're going to be playing kartals over there. Yeah. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Raya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Now Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan. Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Gadadhara Seva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Gadadhara Seva Sadi Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath. Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. Jahoite Vignana Shamishta Puran. Jahoite Vignana Shamishta Puran. H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradan. H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradan. Dasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagas. Dasabar Pada Renu Mora Pader Charana Sebi Bhakta Sanibas. Pader Charana Sebi Bhakta Sanibas. Janame Janame More Abilas. Janame Janame More Abilas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Anande Bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande Bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Harinam Sankirtana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Harinam Sankirtana Tamudas. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Jai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Panamansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tata Satashi Shiman Srila Bhakti Nirmamacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Panamansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tata Satashi Shiman Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Panamansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tata Satashi Shiman Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shadgo Swami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Kushamashram Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Tilak Nariha Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Sri Koladvip Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Seva Ashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan, Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Ju Ki Jai, Shri Purushottam Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya, Shri Nrsingadev Ki Jai, Bhakta Prabhara Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.